If you spend a lot of time on 3D printing YouTube, you might have heard that there are dozens of upgrades that you absolutely must print for your Bambu Lab A1 or A1 Mini. Well, I've printed 24 of these, so I can tell you which ones are actually important and make my life easier, and which ones I wish I hadn't printed and might just be a waste of filament. We'll start with the first 3 things that I think you should print, then other essentials that are less urgent, then some nice to haves, and then some prints that are nice for specific people, including AMS Lite owners. And lastly, I'll show you the things which didn't really work for me and that I wish I hadn't printed. The very first things that I would recommend you print if you've just got your hands on a Bambu Lab A1 or A1 Mini are a poop chute and a poop deflector. These printers, even if you're only printing in a single material, will just fling poop into your workspace. Now, I started off by printing just the poop chute. So it's a little box that catches the poop. That cut things down a lot, but there was still poop on the floor. When I added the poop deflector, the floor poo almost went down to 0. As a previous commenter has mentioned, it's weird that 3D printing people are proud of no poop on the floor. But yeah, chute and deflector is a great combo. There are these boxes that attach to your tool head and they serve as both, so they can work as a little bin and a deflector, but they're very small and over time you do build up a lot of poop. So if you don't want to be changing this very frequently, I would recommend a dedicated chute next to the printer. So as with all of these prints, the chute and the deflector that I use will be linked in the description. If you're printing this chute, I would recommend printing the thing underneath it that keeps it next to the printer because it vibrates and moves away over time otherwise. The next thing I'd recommend you print first is a scraper. And I would recommend 2 actually. So the first thing I'd recommend is a handle and a holder for the official scraper, this metal thing that came with your printer. This is really nice. You can hold it here. You can stick this somewhere so that you can access it more easily. It's sharp, so use a very low angle. Check out my 13 tips video if you don't want to make the stupid mistakes that I've made. But that's the first scraper that I would recommend. And then if you have some PETG, I would also recommend a fully printed scraper. So I use this, it's called the Master Scraper. There are also designs that are really nice that have replaceable blades so that when they wear out, you don't have to throw away the whole thing, you can print a new blade. But I like this. I have used this a ton and it has stayed really nice and sharp. And I think that's because A, the design is nice, and also because it's printed in PETG. So now onto the essential upgrades, but they're less urgent. So you can do this after you've printed the first 3. You can mess around a little bit, print some fun stuff, but then print these relatively soon. The first one here is this cover for the fan on the side of your tool head. So because I had heard this bit of advice, I never made the mistake, so I didn't have to learn about this the hard way. But if you don't have this, when you're moving the tool head, which you will have to do, you might end up accidentally touching the fan, which isn't good for it. It doesn't feel very nice. And you can prevent that completely by printing this little thing. Tiny and very quick to print. Very minimal filament, highly recommended. Then I'd recommend some kind of box to hold all the accessories that came with the printer. If you've bought some extra nozzles or you plan on buying them in the future, I would recommend this specific print. So firstly, it's Gridfinity enabled and it's really nice. It holds all of these things. So it has all of your nozzles at the bottom here. There's tons of room for the other stuff. So the hex keys can go here, but mine are closer to the printer. You can put little lubricant and stuff here. Really nice. And because it's Gridfinity, it goes into my drawers really nicely. If you don't have the nozzles, this might be a bit too much filament for you, or it might be unnecessary, but it's very easy to find good toolboxes. So have a good search because I think this really helps keep things tidy. And even if you printed a toolbox or a tray for the accessories, I'd still recommend a second thing to hold the tools that you're going to use most frequently. Because most of the time, this is going to sit in a drawer somewhere, but there are like a couple of things that you'll need for almost every single print, which is why I have something like this. Now, in the description, I'll give you multiple options. So this is an ocean inspired design, which I've made in Blender. You can print it in different sizes. It's quite versatile. So in this size, it fits my pliers. I don't know what this thing is called. Is it called an angle cutter? My PTFE Scraper, glue stick. So the stuff that you reach for all the time. I also really like this thing, which looks great in 2-color filament, and I'll link this in the description as well. So inside this actually is the next print that I would recommend, and it's this little thing. So why do you need to print this little thing? The maintenance that you have to do on these printers is really minimal. One of the few bits of maintenance that you have to do is lubricate the Y-axis. And you do that with these little lube toothpaste looking things. And you have to get it kind of all over the place. But if you stick this thing on, it makes it so much easier. So you just put this on the Y-axis and then you squirt into it and you go up and down. And this has sped up the process for me. And because you have to do this so often, it's every about 100 to 200 hours of printing, it'll ask you to lubricate this, which is quite frequent, even if it sounds like a long space between them. So that's highly recommended. Another thing that you'll have to do quite often is pouring silica beads from one place to another, or you might use other kinds of desiccants, but most of these come in granules that you have to move around. And if you don't want to get these beads in every corner of your room, then you need a funnel. So this just helps you pour these from one thing to another, and it reduces the chance of spilling these beads everywhere, which I have done too many times to count. If I had been more thorough with using funnels, I would have fewer beads on my floor. So next I have 4 things that are nice to have. One of them is an enormous pair of tongs. It's really nice to have an enormous pair of tongs. Now this one is so thin and it looks nice. It's very elegant because it's designed for carbon fiber PETG, which makes it very stiff, and it means you can get the same stiffness and the same performance in a thinner thing. This is really nice because quite often you want to reach into your build plate, but you don't want to burn yourself or knock the print with your enormous heavy hand, and it's really nice to have this instead. So if one part failed and you want to get it off the build plate, or there's just a little bit of filament sticking off of a print, it's really easy with this to reach in, grab it and move stuff around or get something off. You can also print it without PETG. So this design is meant for PLA. I've scaled it up because it's kind of fun. I've printed this in PETG carbon fiber as well, but you can print this in PLA. It does the same job. It's really nice to be able to reach into your build plate without using your hand. Your hands are also greasy and you don't want to get that grease on the build plate. The next thing that's really nice to have is a set of 3D printed vernier calipers. So this fits inside your wallet, and it's really handy even if you're only printing other people's designs. Let's say you're printing something to hang over your door and you're not sure if your door is the normal door depth. You can measure it with this 3D printed thing that fits inside your wallet, and you can confirm that your door is a good normal door. Or you might have a freakishly thin door and then you don't want to print the normal door print. You want to print the door print for the thinner doors. Really nice. And the same maker makes more of these, though these are more if you're going to be printing your own stuff. This thing, they also fit inside your wallet, and this measures the radius of corners. This thing measures angles. Also, if you printed this and you're confused by this scale, just Google how to read vernier calipers, which is what these are. It allows you to measure things to within 0.1 mil of accuracy, in theory. The next nice to haves are these little clips that keep your spool tidy. They stop it from unwinding. This is really nice and elegant. You put your filament through the middle and then it springs into the inside of the spool, so it keeps it in place. This clips onto your spool and then you tuck the filament in there and it stops it unwinding. They're not crucial because you can stick your filament through holes in the spool, but when you put them next to each other, it can break some of the filament off or bend it, so you have to break it off. These are much more elegant. What I will say is don't dry your filament with this one on, even if you printed it out of PETG carbon fiber, because it will warp and it'll take on this new shape. This one is much better if you're going to be drying, and again, I'll link all of these in the description. And the last nice to have is this little thing, which measures how much filament you have left. Now this is nice to have even if you're using the official Bamboo spools or refills, because even though they do have that measurement, it's sometimes on the inside of the AMS Lite, so you can't get to it without removing your spool. So instead of taking your spool out, you can just put this thing on and get an idea of how much filament is left. Now, if you print the ultimate AMS Lite enclosure, you can't really use this anymore because the enclosure kind of blocks you, but it might still be handy for spools that you have in dry boxes that you don't want to remove and look at the thing. You can just put this on and you can see roughly how much filament is left. So let's move on to the prints that are really nice, but only for specific people. And I'll tell you who should print each one of these. Now, when it comes to dry boxes, there are two different cults that hate each other. There are the people that buy cereal boxes and they put their filament in cereal boxes or big IKEA containers. And then there are people like me who like printing their dry boxes. I'm not going to get into like pros and cons of each one. If you already are very happy with your cereal boxes, ignore this. But if you like printing your own dry boxes, I'm going to shamelessly plug my tribute to the holy grail of filament storage. Watch my video about the design process of how I designed this. But I love this thing and I keep printing more of them. So compared to cereal boxes, the cost of the materials here is almost half per spool stored. It keeps your thing so dry. Like this thing has been at 10% for 4 weeks and counting. I'll be sharing more data about exactly how dry it keeps things. If you've got the Chute E1 dryer, you can print this with a bottom that allows you to dry using this box. You can see the filament inside. It prints in just 2 plates. I can go on. I really like this thing. I'm really happy with what I've been able to build. And if you like printing your own dry boxes, it's hard to get better than this. And I should say it's not perfect and maybe it will never be, but I will be continuously improving this, taking on feedback from the community. So like vote in my polls about the features that you think are missing that are the most important. Comment on that video telling me what I should change about it. The next print that is really nice for specific people is the little Timelapse mod. So this is good for content creators like me, but some people just like time lapses, right? Like even if I wasn't going to share them on this, I like taking time lapses. Maybe that's weird, but there are these mods that let you take a picture every time a layer is finished and you get really nice smooth time lapses. I've remixed one that works with any major brand of camera. It doesn't use Bluetooth, so it's really reliable. It takes a photo every single time and it's really nice, so you can print that. But there are also mods that work with like Bluetooth remotes for your phone, and there are lots of different options here. But if you like time lapses, consider some kind of time lapse mod. Now this third thing, I was a bit of a hater and I didn't think it would be useful, but I printed one for this video and it turns out to be really handy. It's this little plate holder. Now I only have 2 plates, a textured plate and a smooth plate. And I thought, oh, I only have one, I can keep it in the box or something, but it's really annoying to open the box and swap them every time. In this thing, it's so easy to just take them out, put them back in, take up very little space. So this is highly recommended, even if you only have 1 extra plate. So this next one, I haven't actually printed because I haven't had to, but if you're buying third-party spools, often they'll be the wrong size for your AMS Lite, but if they're larger, you can usually print an adapter that adapts the spool so that it works on the AMS Lite. Now the next one's a kind of a category. You can print your own spools. If you run out of these things and you have, it's recommended to use PETG so you can dry with them, or ABS, ASA if you have it. You can print your own entire spools. You'll have to analyze the cost to see if that's worth it for you in terms of the material, but also the time on the printer, because it's a lot of material and it'll take a long time to print. What's easier to print is these little things. So these are like mini spools. You can wind small amounts of filament on them. And so these are nice if you're going to be printing your own filament. Watch my video about that, about how to print your own filament and how to get it right and avoid the mistakes that I've made. But having this mini spool thing allows you to take like the end bits of filament that you don't want to throw away, but you don't want them to take up a whole spool, and you can wind them onto this. That way you can store 3 materials, as I've done here, without using 3 entire spools on them. Now the next one is for people who are not boring. I am boring, so I haven't printed one of these yet. And it's an extruder spinner. So as you print and as you extrude filament, this yellow thing on your printer will turn, and you can quite easily replace that with something else that looks fun. I'm happy with my boring yellow extruder, and again, because I haven't printed that, it's not counted in those numbers. So now we have 4 prints that I think are really nice if you have the AMS Lite. First one is this ultimate AMS Lite enclosure. It was one of the first things that I printed, and it's really nice. It keeps your filament dry as you're printing from it. I told myself that, oh, if I put lots of desiccant in there, I can get away with not having to dry my filament. I don't think you can do that. You do need a filament dryer, I think, especially if you're going to be using PETG or anything above PLA. But the AMS Lite enclosure keeps things dry for much longer, so you don't have to worry about filament going off while it's on the printer. And depending on your room and the setup, the top mount for the AMS Lite is really nice. I printed the one by the same maker as the AMS Lite Upgrade enclosure thing, because they're guaranteed to be compatible with each other. Also, it gives it a little bit of extra room so that the tool head doesn't bash the enclosure at the top. And if you have the enclosure, it makes it a little bit awkward to remove spools because you can't put your hands around them. So this little spool removal tool makes that really easy. You can just put it in the middle of the thing. It releases the tension, whatever. You can take the spool off and it makes things easier. And the last AMS Lite related upgrade isn't necessarily for everyone, but there are these little spacers that you might have different uses for. So for some reason, the one that came with your printer broke, you can print one and replace it. If you want to switch between the AMS Lite and an external spool quite frequently, you can print one with more spacers, so you can always have multiple PTFE tubes. I printed this one, it only has 4, and I did this for something else. I was doing experiments to see if I can get dual tone filament to print more reliably. In the end, these didn't help, but I've kept them on because they keep the whole thing looking a little bit neater. I don't know, the tubes look a little bit nicer with this on, but that's subjective, so this isn't for everyone. I did figure out how to print dual tone filament without the filament switching halfway through, and you can watch this video to learn about that if you're interested. So let's move on to the things which I wish I hadn't printed, but I'm not saying there's no use case for these. I don't want to bash the creators of these in any way. I don't want to make it sound like I'm doing that. They're just things that I haven't found the use case for. Maybe there are use cases for them, and so I'll still link to them in the description. And if you like these, or if you see something here that I've missed, then please let us know in the comments so we can all learn. The first thing is, I wouldn't print any scraper in PLA. So this thing I printed very early, and PLA is just so soft that 2 or 3 scrapes and it looks like this. Whereas the Master Scraper PETG, it's much less blunt, and I've used this 100 times roughly versus 5. So I wouldn't recommend any scraper in PLA. Next is this little thing, which is supposed to go on the back by the bit where the nozzle wipes itself, and it's supposed to catch little bits of filament that fly off. So I had this on for maybe 2 weeks, and this is how much stuff it caught in that time. It didn't catch a single thing. There's a speck of dust in there. Maybe this is important for other printers, but on my A1, this has caught exactly 0 bits of filament. After a while, it flew off by itself because it felt like it wasn't being very useful. So I've kept it off. I wouldn't recommend this for A1 or A1 Mini. So the next thing, I was getting warnings about timing of the X belt not being good, so suggesting I tighten it. I tried tightening it multiple times. I then thought that, oh, maybe the reason it's giving that error is because the table is wobbly or something. And I thought, oh, what if that's affecting my print quality? What if stabilizing my thing will improve my print quality? So I printed these enormous things that they attach to the back of your printer and they are supposed to stabilize it. So the reason I didn't attach these is because I realized I needed screws and I couldn't be bothered to attach it. The better reason not to print this is there's no evidence that stability makes print quality worse, and there is good evidence that it doesn't. So there's a video, I believe it was by Maker's Muse, I'll link it here, where he tested printing in all sorts of weird situations, like wobbly table. I think he was able to print with his printer suspended from a rope, and he couldn't measure any improvement or any deterioration in print quality in any like reasonable scenario. So that's why I gave up on attaching those stabilizers, because I don't think it was going to help the print quality, which is what it comes down to at the end of the day. The next thing which I've printed and that I find myself not using is these little things to help you get the PTFE tubes out of your extruder. And I printed this thing that attaches to your printer and it stays on the whole time. And the idea is that you don't lose it. I also tried a different one, like maybe it was the design and maybe this one is better. But why didn't I like this? Don't get me wrong, removing the PTFE tubes out of your hot end is like really annoying, but I found that it's annoying anyway. So it's annoying without these and it's annoying with these. It takes like a knack. You have to pull really hard on the PTFE tube. So I've learned to like wrap my fingers around it to get a good amount of grip, but I had to do that without these tools, and I've had to do the same thing with these tools. These help you like push the little black thing down, which allows you to release it. But to me, it's the same whether I do it with my thumb or whether I do it with one of these tools. And over time, I found that I prefer doing it with my other thumb because I don't have to look for this thing and grab it. And if I have this thing on, I don't want to like move it around and like get it onto the right thing and then push it. And it's like fiddly to push this anyway. So if you find yourself like changing the tubes really frequently and you hate it, you can give these a chance. But I think most people, especially if you're going to put the AMS Lite on there, you're not going to remove the tubes very often, you can skip these. And the last thing that I wouldn't recommend is the build plate aligner. So this is similar to the PTFE tube one, where I'm not saying it's not an annoying problem. It is very annoying to put the plate back on, and if you get it slightly wrong, you might cut your screen off. There's a Reddit post of someone who did that and I feel so bad for them. I want to get it like perfect every time. So it would be nice if there was a better way to align your plate every time. But the reason I don't think it's this is because there's a firmware update that seems to have broken it. So if you look at the print profiles on MakerWorld for these things, you'll see the authors saying like, oh, this no longer works because of a firmware update. And people are looking for a workaround. So let us know in the comments below if you know of a way to better align your plates, but that doesn't break your printer, but I haven't been able to find it. So that's it. I hope I've been able to help you strategize so you know what to print first, what to print next that's less important but still nice, and then what to avoid. If you want to learn about my design process of how I made the Timelapse mod, then click here. And if you want to learn about how I designed the tribute to the holy grail of filament storage, click here, and I hope to see you soon.